Over 2 years ago, I featured the 2018 GMC Acadia Denali, and I made the joke that there wasn't anything exciting about that 3-row mid-size crossover SUV. And the same is true today. The thing is though, we're at the end of 2020. This is December, believe it or not, even though I'm standing here in a t-shirt. But we're at the end of 2020, meaning the 2021s are arriving, and they've already been announced for pretty much all the GMC vehicles. Sadly though, this one's not a 2021. Our snapshot is on this 2020 GMC Acadia AT4. Now, we featured the Canyon a couple weeks ago, and that had a AT4 package on it. That's the new trim for their kind of off-road oriented vehicles across the board for pretty much everything under the GMC brand. So we're taking a look at this one to see everything about it. But because we're at the end of 2020, you probably want to know about the 2021s more than anything else, because there are some pretty important changes. So while this physically is a 2020, I can at least tell you what's new so that you can decide whether or not you should be looking at one of these, or maybe wait to find one of the 2021s. Now, this vehicle, base MSRP is $47,898 Canadian. We do have one package on here, the $1,895 GMC Pro Grade package, bringing the price up to $49,793 Canadian. Now that's where it's important. Let's talk quickly about pricing, because the base MSRP for the 2021 Acadia AT4 has gone up by $500 Canadian, and that package has gone up by $1,100. Now, what do you get with the 2020's Pro Grade package? Dual pane sunroof, driver alert package, automatic emergency braking, IntelliBeam, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, follow distance, front and rear parking sensors, front pedestrian braking, and the safety alert. Seat rumbles your seat as you're pulling in, and it'll tell you instead of beeping with the parking sensor. So that's pretty decent for about $2,000 on the 2020. But here's why I say it might be important for you to wait for the 2021, depending on what you want out of a vehicle. Again, it's going to be a little bit more, but for that extra $1,100 for this package, you do get 2 memory options for the driver's seat, power steering wheel adjustment, an 8-inch driver information cluster screen that's customizable, color head-up display, heated steering wheel, which is a miss on this, heated outboard rear seats, HD surround camera system, heat and ventilated front seats, but that only comes as a 2+2+2 configuration, whereas this specific vehicle is a 2+3. There's no third row on this trim, the way that it's configured, but if you go with the 2021, you're stuck because they've made second row captain's chairs standard across the board, meaning you're pretty much stuck getting that second row with the third row in the back to have more passenger space. You're looking at that about $1,600 price difference to get the exact same vehicle. And if you really like this quick silver metallic paint, not available anymore on the 2021 AT4. So again, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're just buying the base AT4, you're not adding any options to it, then maybe it's worth getting the 2020. Visually, they're pretty much the same. The only major feature that they've added for 2021, aside from changing the packaging and option and pricing a little bit, is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But anyway, that's what's different for 2021. You're better informed now, so if you are in the market for one of these, whether it's new or used, you'll know what the differences are between this and the newest one. But what do you get if you go with the AT4? I mean, it's not just a slight appearance package, but it does give you a unique off-road design to it, along with active torque control all-wheel drive, hill start assist, hill descent assist, and these 17-inch gloss black rims with all-terrain tires on it. So you do get some off-road capabilities with it. This could be ideal if you live somewhere like we do here in the country, where you might be taking it off-road, not necessarily on a mountain or rock pass, but if you do have to take it onto a rougher terrain, this might be the way to go. Now, while this AT4 is no Denali competitor, we did feature that in 2018. So what's changed? They had a facelift in 2020. The front end and rear end got updated to match what GMC is doing across the board. It's not the absolute latest design traits where they put the badging for the vehicle in the center, whereas this, it's still on the side of the tailgate. But the point is, it did receive a small facelift for 2020. It still uses the same 3.6-liter V6 engine, producing 310 horsepower, 271 pound-feet of torque, but the 6-speed transmission has now been updated to GM's 9-speed. You can also get up to 4,000 pounds towing, or 1,814 kilograms if you go with the towing package, not optioned on this specific car. The only other real difference with this vehicle over the 2018 that we drove is it now has the push button transmission that we drove before. It's the electronic precision shift, which uses buttons on the center console instead of a gear shifter in order to get into gears. We saw that when we drove the 2018 GMC Terrain. Wasn't on this bigger Acadia, and now it is. So a couple small things for the facelift on this, but aside from that, it's more or less the same vehicle that we drove before. But we did have a couple small complaints about the Acadia when we drove it. Didn't have LED headlights, just HID. That's been fixed. These are now full LED headlights, including the high beams. Same thing for the fog lights. They were halogens even on the Denali trim that we featured in 2018. They are now LED as well. Unfortunately, there's still no rain sensing wipers on this specific model, but what can you do? Everything else though seems to work pretty well, and the pricing hasn't gone up too much over that time. So about $49,000 Canadian. I believe it's about the same if you go with it in the States, configured about the same way in US dollars. But now it's important for us to take this on the road, figure out how it performs, drives, and handles, see if that transmission has made a difference when it comes to our overall driving experience, and everything else you need to know if you're in the market for the 2020 GMC Acadia AT4. You know me, I do like to get the fuel economy numbers out of the way right away so that you have an idea of what this does on our test loop. It completed it in 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers. US miles per gallon is in the lower third below. That's a little bit better than the 2020 Mazda CX-9 that we featured, and quite a bit better than the Dodge Durango SRT that we featured. Those were two vehicles that we started off 2020 with, essentially before the lockdown. So it's a little bit more fuel efficient, and it depends on how you're driving. Because this uses that twin clutch all-wheel drive system that we talked about when we featured this in 2018, you have the potential to save a little bit more on fuel because you can disengage the rear wheels completely. We talked about this when we did the Chevrolet Trailblazer a few weeks ago. Because this is an all-wheel drive crossover, you obviously have all-wheel drive, but most vehicles in the segment, it's either fully locked in all-wheel drive mode or it will be an automatic. So it'll decide whether or not it needs to be using all four wheels. But with this system, you can tell it, listen, I need you to be an automatic all-wheel drive in case there's some slippage, whatever the reasons may be, you've got all four wheels available. But in a dry-ish situation like we're in right now, I don't need four-wheel drive, so I can just put front-wheel drive on, and I know that I'm not wasting any extra fuel by using the rear wheels in conditions I don't need it. So it depends on the market. You might find that in some places you don't need all-wheel drive, period. So it would be great to have, and then if you really do need all-wheel drive, it's there. So that's why I think the fuel economy was a little bit better on this. Plus, the 9-speed transmission is better than the 6-speed that we featured in 2018, so that could help as well. We didn't do our test loop. It didn't exist when we drove the Acadia Denali, but we reported 10.5 liters per 100 kilometers. That was like, doing all the stuff that we usually do in a week. That number isn't accurate to compare to anymore. I'm at 13.2 liters right now. We've had some rough weather, so I've been in all-wheel drive mode. And because of what's going on here in Quebec with the global pandemic, I don't leave the house. I basically drive to and from the same place every single day using a lot more fuel than I normally would. So, point is, fuel economy isn't too bad. Let's talk about the drive, ride, and everything else, including the interior. Watch our video on the 2018. This vehicle will be incredibly familiar. The biggest changes really is the center console, where the gear shifter used to be. They've rearranged everything. Cup holders are slightly different. They're still sort of cup trays. They don't really grab onto your drink, but they've switched everything around, moved some of the buttons, made it a little bit better, and then the push button transmission. It takes a little bit getting used to, but once you get it, you get the hang of it, and it's fine. It does save on space there, so some nice things to go on there. I have no complaints about it. And we really didn't have too many major complaints about the Acadia when we drove it. This is more option towards what people are going to be buying if they're in the market for this. This isn't the fully loaded Denali. So, we've got the features that people need, not necessarily all the features that you'd want, but heated front seats, navigation, Sirius XM, you've got what you really need. Plus, dual sunroof is nice to have as well. So, for the most part, I've been pretty happy with it. The ride and performance on this is good. It's one of the vehicles that still offers a V6. We're going to see that. If you haven't started to notice that already, this segment is changing number of the new vehicles coming out in the mid-size crossover segment will be dropping V6 engines. You'll only be able to get turbocharged inline 4s. So they still offer a V6 as of now. That might change, but you do have that option, and 4,000 pound towing isn't bad. It's not as good as some of the other competition offered with V6 engines, but it depends on what you're doing, whether or not towing is important to you. The one thing I do get asked a lot is seat comfort, and I realize that I don't talk about that too much. In fact, I almost never bring it up, because for me, I don't have issues with it, right? Yeah, even some of the cars that people say, even as a smaller person, I find that the seats are really firm. Yeah, I'm a different guy. Maybe I'm not the best when it comes to determining seat comfort because I bring my own cushion with me in the fact that I'm really big. But I don't have any complaints about the cloth seats on here. I do find that you sink into them, and the only small thing is if you're on a slightly longer drive, you might feel a little bit of fatigue in your legs. It's the only thing I've noticed that's a negative, and that could just be me, but for the most part, they're what you would expect out of cloth seats. Seating position is good. I've got decent headroom here. You've got enough adjustment available so you can move around however you like, and then visibility is good on this vehicle as well. That was the takeaway when we did the Denali. Aside from it being pretty expensive for what you got out of it, and I said, if you're going to be going for this size of vehicle, go with the Buick Enclave Avenir, because you're kind of getting the same sort of kit for about the same price, but just looks a little bit nicer. This one, again, there's no major red flags, but there's also nothing that stands out. There's no features on this that you can't find anywhere else for a little bit less. Yeah, captain's chair is now standard. We're seeing that across the board. Yeah, interior space is pretty comparable for mid-size crossovers. So if you're looking for something that works, GMC has it. It's been on the market for a long time now. The small facelift hasn't really changed anything that's too worrisome. Most of the technology on here we've seen for a while, so you're not taking any chances with this vehicle. But if you want something that stands out, this isn't it. I will admit that the facelift looks good. It's a nice, solid update to it. Front end is nice. The turn signal integration with the daytime running lights is a nice plus. And again, it works for what people want out of this vehicle. This AT4 trim, more of an appearance package than an actual off-road vehicle. The only thing that it does is add all-terrain tires. There's no skid plates or anything else. It really is more of an appearance package, but that's what people are looking for these days. They don't actually want to do off-roading. They just want to make it seem like they're doing off-roading.